What's up, guys? Today I'm going to be going over 10 things every beginner fisherman should know when starting out their journey with fishing. The first tip that I would give is to start simple. There's no need to overcomplicate things when fishing. You should start with basic gear like a simple rod and reel and use very simple baits like worms or even corn. In fact, the first fish that I ever caught was using corn. You don't need fancy equipment in order to catch your first fish. In fact, I think it's better to focus on the techniques and your physical skills rather than focusing on having the most expensive rod and reels or expensive bait. You just need to focus on how you're actually going to be catching the fish. The second tip that I would give is to go out and do research before you actually fish. Learn about the body of water that you're going to be targeting. Learn about what fish species are there. Learn about how many people fish there, where structures are in the water, what baits they like to fish. Talk to people that are there. Doing research online can be very helpful, but it can also give you some wrong information. If you are going to be doing research online, especially with like YouTube, make sure you find information that's actually relevant to where you're going to be fishing and the targets and the species that you're going to be fishing to make sure that the information that you're going to do is actually going to work. One thing that helped me the most was talking to people that were fishing the spot. Figuring out what they were using and what works for them was the most helpful thing that I did. Third tip that I would give is to learn by doing. You're not going to master fishing just by watching videos on how to fish. You need to get out there and try different methods, try different spots, and figure out what'll actually work best for you. Going out and fishing is the best way to become the best fisherman you can. You can figure out, especially relative to the body of water that you're fishing, because it's going to be different everywhere. You can figure out what would work best for you, what you're the best at fishing, because sometimes there's just lures that might work for other people, but they don't work for you. So you need to figure out what just works best for you. Trial and error is the most effective method. If nothing works in one spot, try a different spot or try a different lure, but just keep trying things until something works well for you. Fourth tip that I would give is to adapt to your environment. This is where I struggled when I started fishing. The first place I ever fished was on vacation in a small town in Arkansas, in a very, very small creek. That's where I caught my first fish, and when I went back to my hometown and started fishing a large lake, I tried applying those same methods, which did not work at all. You have to know that every body of water is different. They're going to have different species, so different things are going to work. You need to know this and do your research on that ahead of time and figure out what will work. You can't fishing isn't it doesn't have a one-way solution. You have to try different things, different places, different times a year. It's all very, very different. The fifth tip I would give is to be patient and persistent. Fishing takes time. You're going to have to be patient. You might not always catch fish. There's some days where the conditions may seem fine and you'll just go out and not catch anything. And that'll happen. That's why you have to have persistence and go out there. The more often you go out there, the more often you'll be able to figure out what tips and tricks will help you catch fish. Figuring it out for yourself consistently is the best way to progress faster. Sixth tip that I would give is to focus on one species at a time. You're not going to be able to go out there and just fish for every single species that's in a lake. The baits can be very different. For example, for a bass, you're very often going to use artificial lures. But if you're going to use something like a catfish, which catfish have a very poor sense of sight and rely mostly on their sense of smell, you're going to use very natural baits like cut up fish or chicken livers, for example. So you need to know what species you're going to fish for to make sure you can choose the right lures. The seventh tip that I would give is to experiment with different baits. Doing what other people tell you is not always going to work. One example for myself is I tried fishing with marshmallows once, and it ended up being one of the best baits I've ever used to catch catfish, and I was able to consistently catch catfish. This can be for a variety of reasons. One reason is because people aren't used to using this bait, so stuff that works, these fish haven't seen before, so they'll be much more interested, and it might end up being a secret lure that you can use every day. My eighth tip, and one of the most important, is to find a good spot. If there's no fish in the spot that you're fishing, you're obviously not going to be able to catch anything. So being able to find a spot that has a good amount of fish and isn't too targeted will be very, very helpful. One tip for this is use Google Maps. Find bodies of water, make sure they're public so you're not going to get trespassed, and just go out and fish them. Or another example you can use is an app called FishBrain. This app allows you to see other people's fish catches and you can post them to see where people are catching fish in your area. Another thing related to this is a phrase that I learned early on in fishing. Don't leave fish to find fish. If you're at a spot where you're catching fish consistently, there's no point in leaving to go somewhere else, especially at the same body of water. There's no point in trying somewhere else if you have a spot that works. The ninth tip I'll give is to change your fishing technique based on the time of year. Fish are very sensitive to water temperature, and it greatly affects how they act. When the water is very cold, especially in the fall and winter, the fish are very, very slow, and you have to use slower lures to catch these fish. They're also very lethargic, so you have to make sure that you use lures that aren't too flashy and smaller lures. And when it's hot, this technique can change a lot. But also where you fish. When it's hot and sunny out, one of the best places to fish is in shade, especially along shade lines, because that's where these fish like to hang out in the much cooler water. The 10th and final tip that I'll give is just to enjoy the fishing. Some days you won't go out and catch fish, but in my experience, these days have been some of the most fun I've had. Going out, especially with a friend, even if you don't have any luck fishing, can still be a very fun experience. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that these tips can go out and help you catch fish and start your fishing journey.